Elbows Up. It started as a funny little campaign with Mike Myers from Wayne's World fame, the Pride of Scarborough, and wannabe Prime Minister Mark Carney. And it worked. And it worked to no end as Mark Carney is Prime Minister. And the Elbows Up cry is still loud and clear across the country. To talk more about it and how much it cost us as a country, as always, Paul Micucci. Paul, how are you?
Hey, Jim. How you doing?
Good. Now, as a guy who still plays beer league hockey every Wednesday, I know about Elbows Up. And when I first saw it, I thought it was kind of hokey. However, there's no question it resonated with Canadians of all ages. And still to this day, it resonates. Even though Mark Carney, I don't hear him mention the phrase Elbows Up, but Canadians from coast to coast still mention it.
Oh, yeah, sure they do. And, Mike Myers came in, he did the commercials with him. I guess, they paid him to come aboard.
Sure.
He came aboard. He's back in Hollywood. I think he has 2 homes in the U.S., so he went back to the U.S. And he's living his life back as a pseudo-American. And here we are, with the leftovers, I guess, of the remnants of the campaign. And, it's interesting. We did a show recently on the Gordie Howe Bridge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Still closed. Right. And today they came out and they actually put the toll rates out.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
So it's a toll battle between the 2 bridges.
Okay. So in 2 minutes, I'm going to go off. My head blew off when I saw this. So, $8 Canadian for a passenger vehicle. And $12 an axle for a commercial vehicle.
Okay.
All right.
For the Gordie Howe Bridge.
For the Gordie Howe Bridge, right?
Yes.
So what happens if the existing Ambassador Bridge has a toll rate below it?
Well, I think it's a time thing. You'll have to say, because you can check your app before you cross. It's a 10-minute wait at one bridge. It's 30 minutes at another. And if you're under a time crunch, you may spend extra money because you need to get across quicker.
Go across, right. So only if it's empty.
Yeah.
So is the crossing at the bridge ever full anymore? Not with passenger vehicles, maybe with commercial vehicles.
I think it's more commercial.
Yeah. Trust me, I've been across a couple times now. There's no passenger vehicles at the border, right? So
which is, and we'll get into it later, is a byproduct of Elbows Up. So for all the just-in-time deliveries, food delivery, and et cetera, that's where you're getting your bulk of the people.
Right. So this campaign, as you mentioned when we started, was really based on, a legendary hockey player, Gordie Howe, played for the Red Wings, 801 goals. Kept the record up until Wayne Gretzky, I think.
It was Wayne.
Wayne.
And then Alex Ovechkin broke Gretzky's record.
Right.
But I had the great privilege to meet Gordie Howe twice.
Oh, yeah.
And the second time I met him, it was a year before he passed. And this story gets me. So I wanted to take a photo for my dad, who was getting older, who idolized Gordie Howe. And he shook my hand. And it's hard to understand how big and strong his hands were, even as an 80-year-old man. And then the cameraman said, "Turn to the camera." And as I smiled, he gave me an elbow to the ribs. It's one of my favorite interactions. He used those elbows during his playing days to gain respect and gain space on the ice. And there's a lot of video evidence in his NHL days and when the WHA, when he played with his sons, of young players getting too close and that elbow would go out. Yeah. And you knew not to mess with Gordie Howe.
Yeah, well, he was the all-rounder, right? So basically, he could, he would get an assist, a goal, and a fight all in one game.
The Gordie Howe hat trick.
Yeah, the Gordie Howe hat trick. And that's how he was known and a legend for it because he was as tough as he was a good hockey player.
It's so tough.
Talent-wise. But, it's interesting. And I was, you track his career and you and I have talked about it before. The WHA, right? So he retires from the NHL.
That's right.
And he had kind of, it was Gordie Howe. And it was
Mark and Marty, his sons.
Mark and Marty. And then the other NHL, there's one other guy who went into the WHA, made it famous.
Oh, Bobby Hull.
Bobby Hull.
Yes.
Right? So Bobby Hull. So with Bobby Hull with the wicked slap shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bobby Hull. And they were the ones who kind of branded it. It's kind of like you see in professional golf and tennis now as you see these other groups sort of starting up. So they were kind of the flagship players that went over with a young Wayne Gretzky and tried this league. But this league was, probably in trouble before it started.
It was, but I will say this, because they overpaid for names, the NHL stars at the time were underpaid, Paul.
Oh, big time.
So Gordie and Bobby and those players raised the limit of pay. And there's a lot of guys in the NHL who went from making, honestly, 30, 40, 50 a year to making over 100 a year because of what they did in the WHA. They made a lot of old school NHL players money. Back in the day, people don't realize this. NHL players needed jobs in the summer because they didn't make enough money.
So Christie Pits, when I was a kid, we used to go down and meet the NHL players coming out of the pits with their lunch buckets.
Yeah.
And, my dad's insurance broker was an NHL guy.
Yeah.
So, they're for his businesses. So you used to meet NHL players everywhere.
That's right.
So, yeah, it was kind of the starting of salary increases to get decent wages. But it also, and not complaining, but, some things you do notice, higher salaries meant less, in the end, basically less involvement with the fan base. And I remember the old NHL players, Dickie Duff. I remember Dickie Duff on a Sunday morning cutting across Hyde Park with a cashmere coat and a top hat, stopping to tip pucks into the net with us and talk for a minute.
That's pretty cool.
And then off he went, right? They were normal guys who were, had their own fun lives, right?
Yeah.
And they were in the bars and the restaurants and used to see them about town, having fun. And
Yeah.
they all had interesting challenges, but they were real characters. And we lost that a little with the salary increases. But fast forward, WHA goes forward. It has 7 seasons, tumultuous at best. Teams open, team close, teams move cities, and all of a sudden the NHL said, okay, we're going to pay some teams to disappear, and then you can fold into us.
Yeah, they took 4. They took the Quebec Nordiques, the Edmonton Oilers. They took the Hartford Whalers at the time. And so all of a sudden you had these, and Winnipeg Jets, these 4 teams now were part of the NHL. And what happened was for the NHL, Wayne Gretzky's idol, a mentor, was Gordie Howe.
Yep.
And as Wayne entered the league and was deemed to be too small, he'll never survive, they ended up becoming the dynasty of the 1980s. And it's all, you can point to so many things in hockey back to Gordie Howe, the way he carried himself. He was always a gentleman to the media and fans, treated fans, young and old, with the utmost respect. And all my travels in broadcasting and sports broadcasting, and I'm sure he's had bad days, but I've yet to hear a story about a bad interaction with Gordie Howe.
Yeah. No.
Like, it just doesn't exist.
No. And his contribution to that league and that league being a little bit rogue, and it was a rogue league back then, hockey. So he broke ground.
Yeah.
But the league ended up being sucked up and actually, joined the NHL, and
That's right.
went on to have a bigger NHL with more American teams
And more star power.
Yeah. But it really was the Americanization of hockey at that time, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting, I was getting ready for the show, and I'm looking kind of at the analogy where we are right now. We created a campaign based on Elbows Up, based on a guy who's a great guy, but really led kind of the movement that actually North Americanized hockey, amalgamated the league, and actually took it into the U.S. in a big way.
Well, it's weird because when they first amalgamated, it was 3 of the 4 teams were Canadian. And of course, Winnipeg ended up moving to Phoenix, which is now in Utah. But then Winnipeg got their team back after Atlanta folded, and the Nordiques became the Colorado Avalanche. But at the time, it looked great because all of a sudden you had Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver. You had also instantly 6 Canadian NHL teams in a small league.
Yeah.
And it was great. And in the 80s, it was, and into the early 90s, it was the Oilers, the Canadians, the Flames were all winning all the Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
For about a 10-year period, it was almost all Canadian teams winning.
Right. And now look at now.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't win at all.
No,
right?
It's been 1993 is a long time ago.
And now we have Team Canada.
Yes.
The U.S., the men and the ladies.
Yes.
Times are changing.
Well,
right?
yes.
So this is an interesting, I find, and, I sometimes, with Canadians, I sometimes say, okay, we got to wake up now because we're not living in the past. Mike Myers, Elbows Up, Gordie Howe, it's all good stuff, but it's led us to where we are now. And so now we're sitting 110 days out from CUSMA. right?
Yeah.
We have a new trade ambassador, new head of trade, right? Janice,
Charette, yeah.
right? Dominic LeBlanc is still making those trips down to Washington, which we're not hearing much about. We have a prime minister who's on the road, pretty much full time, right? He's kind of decided that, trade missions everywhere in the world are real important.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. I don't quite understand some of the logic. I've talked to you about that. Given, there's a bunch of data out there, and I'm sure he looks at it too. The majority of our exporting is to the U.S. We all know that $419 million or billion dollars, billion go to the U.S. China is the next closest at 13%, but we only export 21 billion to China. We only export 6 billion to Mexico.
Yeah.
The UK, 20 billion.
Right.
Right. So this is it. As we get closer and we got 110 days to go, we're kind of in the throes of the decision now. So elbows up. Okay. I know it was a campaign slogan.
And it worked to perfection.
Right. But you always got to watch what you ask for. So you run on a campaign where you're going to be defensive and you're going to go out. So now you have to deliver, because we're coming to that point where, it's time to giddy up. And if you're going to replace, some of these deals and you're going to have middle country discussions and all that good stuff, it's time to now sort of show us where that trade is going to come from.
But Paul, who are we speaking to? Who are we dealing with? Now, if I'm Mark Carney and I'm Canada and I'm dealing with Norway and Japan and these other countries, you have a pretty good sense of where they're coming from and the relationship you're dealing with. With Donald Trump right now, how can you be sure between now and 110 days what you're dealing with? Look what's going on in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. He seemed to claim, and it was his quote, that the Strait of Hormuz, that everything was great. And this was his exact quote on the Strait of Hormuz, that the straits are in great shape. The same day that there's tankers on fire everywhere. And the price of gas in Canada is going to go up on Friday and again on Saturday, and diesel. Right. And they don't know when it's going to stop and when this is going to end. So I know, but CUSMA negotiating, are we dealing with serious people, and are we dealing with the right people? And they're so distracted with everything going on with Iran and everything going on in their country. I'm not really sure how binding this deal is even going to be.
Right. Well, but at some point, that's a discussion we need to have, right? And then we need to sit down and we need to figure out how we're going to replace certain industries, if we're going to replace certain industries, if we're going to export certain other places, how that's going to happen, or quite frankly, that isn't going to happen. The car industry is still sitting in flux, right? Yes. We're 110 days out. Soft lumber is still sitting in flux. Steel and aluminum is still sitting in flux. All these industries are sitting in flux. We're on the heels of a 15% tariff across the board once July 1st ends. And quite frankly, that's another issue that I know Trump's got to deal with in his own Congress. But it's all things coming to, we're now at some point have to sit down. It's probably not elbows up anymore. It's kind of elbows down, hands out for a handshake.
But Paul, okay, if there wasn't a war in Iran right now, if he didn't face a Supreme Court challenge that shot down the tariffs and the Congress shot down the tariffs, if he was a normal president in a normal presidential tenure, then it would be a different conversation about the CUSMA negotiations. There's nothing normal about what's going on in America right now. So if I'm Mark Carney, how would I go into these negotiations and send my top assistants into the negotiations? Who are we dealing with and what are we dealing with? Because it seems to change week by week.
But didn't we exacerbate that? So we went elbows up. We said we were going to fight. If you look at the differences between Mexico and us.
Yes.
Right? The president's very quiet. Right?
Does he call her the governor of Mexico? I mean, he insults our country and
was-
our prime minister on a regular basis. I am
But
not,
that was-
I'm going to make this clear. I'm not a big Mark Carney fan. There's things about him I don't like, but I get pissed off when Donald Trump in the White House starts calling our prime minister the governor of Canada.
Right. But that started, before Carney. That started in the Trudeau days. Right?
But he keeps doing it.
I know, but, Trudeau kind of barreled down there and, made a mistake at the end of his tenure. And that's kind of carried on through the discussion. So, we kind of went wayward. We seemed like we got that relationship back in tow. And then, we went and did a bunch of stuff to damage that, commercials in the US. We did a bunch of things that got us back offside. We've never it does not appear that we've come back on side. So 110 days left to go. It looks like we are going to have bilateral negotiations with the US right now on trade, if we are at all. And what does that mean? So, I guess we can keep traveling and try to talk to other countries, which is great.
Yeah.
At some point, we have to settle down. We have to say, listen, in 110 days, we're not going to have an agreement. We're going to see an increase in costs. And we're going to go out and we're going to start to do the following, 10 things. And those 10 things are going to be supported by, that's the plan I'm looking for now, because I just don't see, it was all great, elbows up. It was all great, all those conversations. Yep. But, you look at it and you go through and like I said, you have food costs are up.
Yes.
Vehicle costs are up. Everything is kind of risen. We saw a spike, a little bit of employment at the end of 25, but I think that was because people were getting ready for tariffs. So they were hiring temporary workers to store things inside the country.
And through the holiday rush as well.
Yeah. So we saw a little bit of a spike in employment, but that's kind of leveling off. So I'm looking now I'm looking for that plan, right? I'm looking to say, okay, I've traveled around the world. Here's the agreements I have, we're going to now build cars in Canada the following way. We're going to now use our lumber for this. And here's how the government's going to either subsidize it, support it, or encourage it. Mm-hmm. Whether it's financially or whether it's just dropping interprovincial trade. Again, we've talked a lot about interprovincial trade barriers.
They're still up.
Yeah, we haven't done anything.
No, they're still up.
So again, we haven't done anything.
Yeah.
He hasn't stepped in to make sure that's done. The premiers, they've had how many dinners, how many meetings, right?
Yeah.
We still haven't seen any of that.
Yeah.
It's time, to get our hands dirty and not worry about elbows up and start to try to figure out projects in specific industries to drive forward. And that's where I'm kind of at the point. Unless you think you're going to get a deal, unless you think that this is just some, hard negotiating that's going to go into the summer, I don't see it. And to your point, based on Trump's instability, I don't see it. And I don't see anyone around him in a real hurry to get involved with Canada to make that happen.
So, and that's where I'm coming from, Paul, is Carney knows that the president's unstable. He's completely distracted every hour of every day now with what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz and Persian Gulf and all his domestic issues. So if I'm Mark Carney, why would I go to Washington now and start negotiating with a distracted president? So I am going to go around. I mean, even if the people of Canada are going, where the hell is he going? Start cutting deals in all these countries and then sit down with Trump, maybe end of March, maybe in April when he's less distracted, and start really seriously talking about an agreement and send his people there. But I don't think you could do it right now, especially with everything going on in America. I don't think this is the right time. I know the deadline's coming, Paul, but he's not a normal president in a normal time in American history.
No, he's got his hands full. I get it, right? There's a lot going on in his world every day, but there's a lot going on around the world for him, right?
Right.
So park him for, park him for a minute. What's our plan? What's our strategy now? So we were 6 or 7 months late getting a budget through last year.
Right.
So we really didn't do, because of elections and everything going on, we missed all that. We tried to do budget shows. They were tough because, quite frankly, we were so late and our budgets became our actuals. Fine, right? all that because of elections and everything going on. I say, okay, the mea culpa, let's move on. Now we're done that. We're coming up to March 31st, the government's year end. Where's the plan, right? Most businesses, most governments have already dropped a plan into market.
Right.
Right. So now sit down with us and tell us what the plan is now. So now's the time to say, okay, here's how we did, we forecasted this. We actually had a deficit of this. Here's what we're doing next year. I saw the provinces are dropping their, Alberta the other week. Ontario's going to do the 26th, and they're warning us now. They're actually coming out and saying, hey, this is going to be bad. Like Minister Bethenfall in Ontario was all over the news the other day. He's like, listen, I'm sorry. Geopolitical things happening are going to cause us to retract our spending. So we're going to dial back, and here's where we got to go. Now, we don't show all that because we're talking about a bunch of major projects in Ontario, but it's time for, our prime minister and the financiers to sit down and tell us, okay, here's where we think we're going to be. The U.S., if that a large portion of that $419 billion goes away, here's what Canada looks like. Here's how we pivot, and here's where we're going to spend the money on. They started part of that.
They have. But think about it, Paul. They have 3 crucial by-elections coming up April 13th, which would give Carney and the Liberals their majority after the recent floor crossing. So now they have a majority. They know then they can go in negotiations. They have the majority in the House of Commons. They are running the government for the next 3 years.
Right.
After the by-election, April 13th, that's when they get really serious, that mid-late April, because they have the hammer in the House of Commons. They have the majority. They don't have to worry about any votes. If they decide to do something in the negotiation, there is no one and nothing that can stop them. So about a month from now,
yes,
when the by-elections are over and they have their expected majority, this is when things get really serious.
Well, I hope so. But
I mean, I'm thinking they're probably doing preemptive negotiations behind the scenes internally. So when they have the majority, then they can push forward and go, hey, Canada, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it.
Right. No, and I'm totally with you on that. By-election. So let's talk about by-elections for a minute, right? So by-elections, if they get them all, right, which they could.
They only need 2.
They need 2, I know. So they get them.
Yeah.
They get the majority, which is great. They're only the government.
Yeah.
For the people, right? It's not a kingdom. It's not whatever. So they still have to come back and tell the people what they want to do, right? Regardless. So they have to explain where we're going, what we're doing, and how we're doing it, right? And that, well,
you are 100% right.
Right. They're elected officials, right?
Yes, it should be. Forgive me for my cynicism.
I know.
But once Carney and the Liberals have a majority, they will tell the Canadian people what they want to tell them. They're not going to tell them everything. They're not going to tell them the truth. They're going to spit it in such a way to keep the population, fairly calm and make it look good for them. That's the honest truth.
But think about some of the economic indicators that possibly could drop.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? This could be horrendous. Like come July, if we don't have CUSMA in place, or we don't have an agreement, we drop out our exports, unemployment skyrockets. Like the potential outcome of this is horrendous. So it's not like you're going to be able to hide from that. Like
no.
I appreciate what you're saying, but this isn't, to your point about not being normal times in the US, this isn't normal times in Canada. So I think, and where I'm going with this is, what usually could be like a Trudeau era where, quite frankly, you gain majority or you do a compact with the NDP, that was fine, right? You could do that. Canadians kind of took that. Then you could do whatever you want, spend whatever you want, kind of create these silly programs, give money all over the world, travel, whatever.
But no one really questioned it.
But you're not in those times now.
No.
So quite frankly, July comes, regardless of and that's why it's not as important to have a majority anymore. And I think where the Liberals are making a little bit of a strategic error right now is if everything falls out in the middle of the summer, Canadians are not going to care who's really in power or who has votes. Canadians are going to be clamoring at the door saying, you need to fix this. You can't let gas go up because we're an oil and gas rich country.
Yeah, I agree.
Canadians are funny. We're very conservative and we're very quiet most of the time politically. But when your unemployment rate skyrockets over 10%, when your gas price goes over $2.50, then you're going to start to see a different Canadian come out. When seniors, who are the majority support for the Liberals, all of a sudden see their home equity go to like 10% of what it was pre-COVID, then they're going to be like,
But Paul,
I'm not good with this, right?
there is a cult of personality about the Liberal Party, which their unofficial nickname is the Natural Governing Party of Canada.
Right.
And fair or not, there are legions of people, even if they're paying more, even if they have less money, even if their home equity goes down, will support them. I know from a logical accounting standpoint, you're like, that doesn't make sense. But they have that. And if they have the majority, even if the people are upset, they'll go, well, we got 3 years before we have to worry about it. And they can put the commercials out in the social media post and go on CBC and CTV and let you know, don't worry, we'll ride this out together, elbows up, and we'll be fine. And that's how they're going to spin it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I really do think that underestimating the potential climate. I think Canadians think that there's not a bottom. And I think, quite frankly,
I agree.
that where the fatal mistake we're making at this point, whether it be politically or just as a society, as Canadians, there is a bottom. And quite frankly, if the U.S. decides to just walk away for a short period of time, regardless of how many other export deals you can knock down, it really isn't going to.
But
it's not going to help. And quite frankly, we're too far. These 10-year projects that we have on the docket now are too far out. It won't matter, right? Forget the pipeline. No point in talking about pipelines anymore. We're done.
I mean,
We can't get a pipeline.
You can criticize Doug Ford all you want in Ontario. The Ontario line is being built. They're building a subway in downtown Toronto that hasn't been built in downtown Toronto since the 1950s, that will go from the Bloor-Danforth line all the way down to Exhibition Place. They're building the tunnels and the stations right now, and it will open. Like, that's what, as Canadians, that's what we want to see. We want to see construction and pipes and scaffolding and stuff being built. And Doug Ford makes a lot of mistakes, but he's actually building the damn tunnel for the subway that will get built.
Yeah. No, I know. And that's why I think he gets a pass from a lot of people, because at the very least, he's moving projects.
Right.
At the very least, he's moving projects.
And don't you want to be, as a Canadian, driving by and say, oh, look, we're building this, we're doing that? Wouldn't that help?
Federally, it's time to move projects.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. And so
I agree 100%.
And whether you have a majority or not, you're only going to get so much leeway from Canadian citizens if you don't. And I think that's the fatal mistake now. And, the more I take a look at what's happening, so the more, every day you wake up and you go to the grocery store, grocery prices aren't going down.
No.
All my expenses are not going down.
No.
I see these municipalities and they are dipping into their reserves because they have elections coming up. And I think to myself, oh my goodness, talked about being out to lunch. Your municipal governments right now in Canada are just way out to lunch. They're not even getting what's happening. They're in their own little bubble. And I go to these meetings and I listen to these municipal politicians. Let's build a park. Let's build a skating rink. Let's use the reserves to not increase property tax. Let's do all these things. And I think to myself, let's defer development fees. Like, all these things. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you doing at this point? Like, quite frankly, if things get worse and you've already dipped into your reserves and you only have so much left, like, you're not paying attention to the ultimate outcome here.
Or you're not realizing what is the worst case scenario.
And that's where I think, you started with Trump. So this is an interesting one, because, it's funny. We criticize Trump all the time. I do it too. I sit at home and I say to my wife every night, look at that. I don't believe that. I don't believe what's on the screen and everything else. Why is he doing that? It makes no sense. He's oblivious. I go through it every night. But then I look at us and I think to myself, are we kind of making the same mistake? Are we drinking our own Kool-Aid saying, oh, look at that American guy, look at all the mistakes he's making. Yeah, he's making a lot of mistakes. Our mistake right now, majority or not, by elections, whatever, because let's be serious. We've talked about it before. I don't even think there's going to be a contest for by-elections. I think we don't have an opposition and formal opposition. I think they have no interest. It's
not in the
so
two Toronto ridings. There's no hope of a Conservative winning.
Well, it's so funny. The Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre,
Yeah.
he's traveling
In Texas, yeah.
Yeah, he's traveling in Texas. The announcement of the by-election is now. It's on.
Yeah.
You think you'd be back on ground? You think you'd come to ground? Get an apartment in Toronto, go to work, and
No, he wants to go on Joe Rogan.
Great. You're on Joe Rogan, right? If you're going to have a film career, but it really makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, great. Joe Rogan shows are okay, but quite frankly, him sitting there having a hour and a half dialogue about how bad Canada is on Joe Rogan doesn't help Canada, right?
And it doesn't help his candidates in Rosedale, Scarborough Southwest, or Terrebonne, Quebec. Not at all.
Yeah. Well, how much time did he even spend picking them?
I don't know.
He hasn't been around.
All I know is Terrebonne, it's the Bloc or the Liberals.
Yeah.
And the Rosedale riding, someone said, I could put my pet cat there and they'll vote Liberal. Like that's a no-brainer. And Scarborough Southwest is a fairly safe Liberal riding as well.
So let's, for all purposes, they end up with a majority, right? Still doesn't change the ultimate downfall if things collapse. There's no government that can survive a collapse in the economy. Right?
No,
Arnold Schwarzenegger, even in California, when I met him years ago, quite frankly, and he famous line, right? There's no politician can escape a recession or a depression. No one survives.
No.
Right? You might go 2 or 3 years, quite frankly. You might limp along, but that will be the end of you. And quite frankly, it'll wipe you out. So if you allow it to happen, regardless, and honestly, maybe strategically, it's leaving them to carry the ball.
Paul,
Like maybe right now, you and I have had this conversation. Maybe it's kind of a conservative thing. Let them carry the ball because it's going to collapse.
and then they slip in there. They think they can. So right now, Canadians, correct or incorrect, believe that Mark Carney is the only person capable of steering us through the next few years. The polling on all demographics in all provinces indicate that, like overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
So if things get bad, and I find it hard to believe that Carney, with his background and his inner circle, don't have a private doomsday scenario economically that they don't want to share with anyone because they know how bad it could be. But the belief out there with the average Canadian is if it gets bad, he can steer us through it. Now, whether or not he can will be proven, especially, as you say, come July 1st in CUSMA and in the aftermath if it doesn't work out. But the belief is, beyond a shadow of a doubt right now, that no one in Canada trusts anyone else but Carney to get them through the next 3 or 4 months.
Well, that's, in polling. So,
Right.
yeah, I get it. You know what I mean? So, my thinking about that. But
Exactly.
yeah, it'd be great. It'd be great to get an independent poll
Sure.
and actually ask the question.
But that's
Right
not gonna,
now.
that's not going to happen.
No, it would be nice.
Yeah.
It would be nice right now. And I understand what you're saying. And they do say that on mainstream TV does tell us constantly
Yeah.
that the polling is this. I get it, right? It'd be nice to actually get an independent person, run an independent poll, and actually
Let's poll each other right now independently.
Yeah.
You're going into CUSMA. Who do you want leading Canada? Do you want Carney or Poilievre for these negotiations, considering what's at stake and the gravity of it that you just outlined? Like, I'll vote now. I'll vote Carney because I don't trust Poilievre
Right.
has the muscle and the wherewithal to come up with the best deal for the country, considering who he's dealing with.
I guess I don't know this new trade ambassador. So my concern right now, and the reason I paused, I probably would have done the same thing as you. I don't know this
Jenna Charette.
new young lady.
Yeah.
So I have no idea.
She's
Quite
well regarded
to
and
me,
is be a very tough negotiator.
yeah, to me, I'd have to see who Poilievre put forward in
Okay.
that role. So the
Okay.
question, and quite frankly, if I was sitting in him rather than touring to the UK, touring to the US, I would have identified someone who I would have wanted to do that. See, if
Yes.
I'm sitting and I'm having personal credibility, if people can't believe in me, I would actually, I would increase my backbench. I would increase my support by actually bringing in someone who people said, oh,
So
now
I bring
that's
in
an interesting duo,
Paul
right?
Micucci,
Yeah.
for example, with
Yeah.
an experience in this, and this, who has this is his mile-long resume, and he's my appointee to lead what we would do, and have him out there speaking to the media and doing podcasts and interviews. That would be a completely different narrative for the Conservatives right now.
Right. Instead of giving speeches abroad. But I'm with you. So that is my only condition that I do put on that question. But you know what I'd like to see, honestly? I'd like to see now, and, interesting conversation. I would like to see someone go forward and ask that question. So now here's an interesting thing. Obviously, the Prime Minister thinks that Janice is the right person. So he's picked the person that he believes will do the best. So that's a judgment call. You pick the team you think you can go to war with, or you think you can go to fight with, that will win, right? So he's done that. He's picked the team. I would like to ask the same question of Poilievre. Okay, who would you pick? Okay, now I look at it and I'd say, okay, like that makes sense. And that's what I've done. I don't think he has as much interest in doing any of that, quite frankly.
You know what he did the other day? He did one of his silly booze prop videos, complaining about not being able to buy BC wine in Ontario. We've talked about that. Canadians are fed up with the eating the apple and pouring the booze and all these grandstanding sort of prop videos, sort of immature and amateur hour videos.
Right.
Why not have someone with a huge resume and background standing beside you and say, I'm going to introduce this woman, this man, and they're going to tell you why they can negotiate better.
We did the show on defense, and you brought up but it's funny. By the end of the show, you hit an idea, and we didn't rehearse that or anything. We didn't talk about it before. Jean Chrétien, right? And you brought it up, and I was like, "Oh, that's a really good idea." Like if I'm sitting in his shoes right now, I'm having that aha moment. So if he's watching the show, please watch the show with Jim, where he comes up with that aha moment. He picks someone who, quite frankly, would bolster the defense program, the national defense strategy, and hopefully make it happen. Because there's another one, Jim. And I'm not going to get into it, but quite frankly, we're going to do a follow-up show, and I was prepping for it the other night. Have we built anything? Have we built a home? Have we, what's our recruitment numbers like?
The recruitment numbers, I will say that, are going up, and they're building more lodging and residences for the young recruits. They are trying to lay the foundation. So they are making some inroads.
Right. So tell us, come to us and tell us you built 100 homes, or, tell us that you recruited, don't be shy.
Yeah.
Right. Send some milestones, send some benchmarks like you would in any business, and start telling us. Again, the thing with that, forget elbows up for a minute. The thing that would actually do well, because, if you're coming to a difficult time and there's going to be a bump in the road, whether you're in business, in life, whatever, it's better to over communicate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because, you might think you're Teflon and you're going to get a majority and life's going to go well. But you know what? You might be better at this point to over-communicate your plans and make sure you have a plan on the ground and explain why. Tell people why it didn't work. Take a page out of Doug Ford's book, quite frankly, because you make mistakes, but quite frankly, you just keep moving forward. And, maybe you'll get through it. And maybe people will give you the latitude to make those mistakes trying versus not. But I think not putting out a plan, not putting out a budget, believing that if you get a majority, you can just run everything the way you want to, while you're actually supposed to be representing the people, is a fatal mistake, regardless of you have majority or not. And, maybe you do it and maybe you make it, but quite frankly, the doomsday, the black swan event that actually happens, that drops you in that hole because you didn't do that, is what you have to worry about right now.
And it's for all his fault. So one thing, if you're in Ontario and you go on YouTube or you turn on the radio in your car or you're on TV, there's endless Ontario ads. We're building this. We're doing this. We're creating this. Now, part of it is to get the message out. And part of it is in today's society, When's the last time a family sat around the TV and watched the 10 o'clock news or 6 o'clock news? So they know that. I'll give them credit. They're comms teams. So they're putting it out there, social media, radio, TV. And the federal government would be wise, as you say, to do the same. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. And this is how Canadians will benefit over and over again.
Yeah. And last one, just on this one.
Yeah.
We don't need to see any more trips. So, and we're going to talk about it on another show, but you know what? Honestly,
you don't like him standing on the stairs of our
we don't need to see it.
Force One waving?
Honestly,
hey, Nick, I see you later.
We don't need to see any more trips. If you're going to do your trips, just do them.
Yeah.
Like do them for a couple of days. You don't need to take any more pictures, sign anything. Because seriously, all the people I talk to, you know, when I'm dinner parties, having drinks, whatever, everyone says the same thing. What did he sign? Right? Everyone's looking for what we sign now. You know, before the show, we tried to do that. We went.
It's MOUs. It's memorandum of understandings.
Where are they?
Yeah.
Like, where are they? And what are they? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and what do they say?
It's a memorandum of understanding, Paul.
I know, but where does it get filed? What does it mean? Like, so now everyone's going back going, well, I don't know what that means. You know, we were in Japan and then we were in there. So, you know, tell me what it means. And then I know. And
yeah. So it's part of it is Carney's still learning. Well, let's be honest. He's only been really in politics for a year.
Yeah.
He's been a year and he has done some good things. He's had some missteps, especially the flip-flopping with Iran was a stumble.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone would agree with that. And even members of his own caucus had an issue with what he was doing.
And then going abroad in the middle of the discussion in the House.
Yeah.
Not a great
People
idea.
are like, where's the go? Where's the prime minister? We're debating this.
This is a slight issue.
Yeah,
right?
this is kind of important. So, but I think he understands, like he's a bit of a poker player, Mark Carney, to me. And I think purposely he's vague about a lot of things. He doesn't want to show his cards. And that goes back to being the governor of the Bank of Canada, Bank in England, to running a hedge fund, to being in high finance. I bet it was put into his head from day one out of Harvard. You don't tell everyone what you're doing till you're ready to. Don't tell the other person because they'll use it against you.
Oh no! Listen. I don't want him to disclose every single thing he's doing. That's not what we're asking for. But you know, we need a plan A and a plan B.
Plan C, maybe.
A plan C, because quite frankly, if come July 1st, if we get dropped on our head, we better have a pivot plan.
And I'll give Carney and the government the benefit of the doubt. A lot of people won't, but I will. That they have the worst case scenario economically, a guidebook to that. If that happens, we do this and this just to keep Canadians at bay and to keep the country running. So this is best case scenario, likely scenario, worst case scenario. I find it hard to believe they wouldn't have 3 contingency plans in place in case of that.
I hope there's detail.
Yes.
That's my only, that's been my, biggest criticism so far. We, whether it be defense, whether it be economy, we get these very vague plans that are a lot of buzzwords, but they don't really go anywhere. So it's if we're going to lay down some plans, let's figure out tactical plans to move into market.
So you heard the story this week. Department of National Defense had to begrudgingly admit that they're including tree planting and landscaping in their budget for their 2% of NATO spending. And that came out. I'll give David Poilievre, the fantastic writer from the Ottawa Citizen, that one, that they when they're doing any kind of landscaping on the different bases, that's being added to the money being spent in the military.
Goodness. So the Bombardier announcement with drones and everything else is actually supported by landscaping.
Those trees aren't going to grow themselves. Someone's got to put them in the ground, Paul. So look, the elbows up thing, it got them elected. People still mention it. I think a lot of average people mention it. I still, to this day, I get upset. A lot of people upset when I don't think Trump realizes how upset he's made Canadians with referencing the prime minister, the governor of Canada, and all that. And still to this day, so many people refuse to travel to America, will not go on day trips, will not shop there. and Canadians are looking elsewhere to go travel and go spend.
You know, and I've mentioned this to you privately and on other shows, but, you know, having lived in the States, and it's kind of funny because I guess my skin thickened or got harder.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned to you, meetings and conduct in the States are much more hardcore. You know, they're rougher. They're the language, the way they're conducted, up until kind of they hit the Biden up until the end of Obama Biden era, they got a little better. But you know, previously when I first got to the U.S., I'd go to a meeting, and when I first got there, I'd sit there with my mouth open, the way they were talking to each other, and then I go to dinner and I'd be like, oh my goodness, like it's a rough. It is a very rough conversation. In Canada, you never had anything like that. It was very cordial. People were very polite.
If you acted like that, wouldn't it?
It would. Like, and you were kind of told, you know, because I had started off being a CPA, you know, I very proper conduct at meetings. You know, you only went to a meeting, you only had 3 drinks. You know, you didn't do certain things.
It was that strict?
Oh yeah, you were given a whole protocol of how you acted, right? And it was a gray or a blue suit. When you went to a function, if a partner saw you drink more than 3 drinks, you were told the next day, and you were given a reprimand.
Really?
Oh yeah, there were a whole set of golden rules that you had to live by. You never, if someone asked you if you were busy, you weren't allowed to say you were too busy. You had to say you had room, because you never wanted to tell a client that you didn't have enough time for them. So there was all these kind of.
So was the American way is if you had 10 drinks, they don't care as long as you get the deal done.
No, they'd swear, hit the table, yell at you, insult you. You know what I mean? I would go into, and being a Canadian, I would go into boardrooms, and they would tear me down for the first 10 minutes, telling me how inferior Canada was, and then they start to negotiate. Like, it was always about ripping you, ripping you, and then, you know,
okay, let's talk now.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm going to put you off. And that was kind of the art of the war.
Now, is this
the art of
happening
the deal, right?
with Canada and the U.S. now in a bigger picture, you think?
The art of the deal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of this, you know, sometimes, and I look at it that way, and probably I discount it a lot, you know, and whether he calls us the governor or whatever. You know, I got called a lot of things when I was in the U.S., but you know, I got used to it, quite frankly. I only assumed at the beginning of the meeting they were going to go that way.
And then wait it out and then start talking.
Then we start talking.
Yeah.
And it was kind of over time. And I found over time, I became okay with it. I actually kind of started doing it because that's the way we were all doing it, right? That was the way we were conducting ourselves. So a little bit of that, like I always say to people, you know, it's substance versus form. And when it comes to the Trump camp and all the people around him, you know, they're the rougher, older school Americans that I met when I went to the U.S. So that was the guys I was heading into the boardroom tables, and you know, they were not polished. A lot of them weren't educated. You know, street guys, very guttural, and that's kind of what we went through, and that's what you're seeing now. You know, Mark Carney, a little more polished, quite frankly, educated.
A lot more polished,
yeah. Well, but also spent time in the U.S. and the U.K. And you know, listen. Politics in the UK is not pretty.
No.
Yeah, we can't say it's just America.
No.
Politics in the UK is downright dirty.
Some of the stuff they say in their House of Commons is brutal.
It's brutal. They're spying on each other. They're tapping each other's phones. They're you name it.
They're no lightweights.
They're no lightweights, and it's nasty. The stuff is really nasty. So, you know, he went through that. So I'm sure, you know, he got guarded because of that. Now, different. You know, fast forward, you're back in Canada, different times.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have to figure out how to get through this bump, which is going to be a big bump. If in fact, you know, he's got scenarios. Trump comes out of this, Trump, he resurrects, he gets out of Iran. He, stays in power, he gets heralded for huge wins, whatever happened. Like,
he's not out of Iran yet, though.
He's not out of Iran, but there are, I guess that's the contingency plan that, we have to kind of look at now as the Canadians, or not. And quite frankly, what happens then and how do we deal with him? But all that aside, again, a plan without America needs to be put in place. And what I mean without America, with our trade going down from $419 billion, our 2024 export number, to half, we'd have to put that in play and figure out what do we do now, and whether it's the military building, the $88 billion. So is it accelerating our military spend? Is it actually, build at home only, that program we talked about, where
actually build liquid natural gas and oil pipelines.
Yeah.
And, increase the Port of Churchill and whatnot.
What are we doing? And that's by industry. The car companies right now, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, are we, that's the thing, Jimmy. That's what I want to know. Like,
I don't know yet.
Are we going to build our own cars at home? And are we going to take the money we gave to all the big three car companies? Are we going to stop doing that and start giving some money to new car companies to come in, hire Canadians, and we have part ownership with it? And it's from everything. We're talking about our minerals, our resources, oil and gas. Like, we got to go right straight across, and he needs to kind of unfold for us the plan, because right now we're sitting here, gas prices, we're exposed to gas prices. We have been through this before, like
numerous times.
For a lot of younger Canadians, you don't remember Petro-Canada, the Crown Corporation, why it got started, the senior Trudeau coming in to fix it, because quite frankly, gas prices were accelerating, and then Lockheed locking up with Trudeau over Alberta not wanting it, because Alberta was being bought out by the Americans, who today own most of our oil and gas.
Yeah.
Right. Unfortunately, because we finally sold Petro-Canada to Suncor. There's a whole history that I think Canadians need to remember. We need to go revisit. And then we got to look at mining, and we need him to step in on mining. We can't keep being bought up by Australian and American firms and Chinese firms in mining and own none of our resources and have no economy at home. So these are all the things like...
But he can get an easy win, Paul. Like, I'll give Ontario NDP leader Marit Stiles was in the far north Ontario. There's a big problem. A lot of the highways up there, which is access to forestry and mining and heavy goods, are rickety 2-lane highways, and you're getting massive tractor trailers and accidents all the time. She's like, this is ridiculous. And I've done the Trans-Canada Highway, and once you get past Sault Ste. Marie to North Thunder Bay, it's a 2-lane road, the Trans-Canada Highway. Yeah. So that's an easy infrastructure win to widen that and make it a proper highway, especially access. If we're saying we're going to be expanding Northern Ontario, expanding to more remote areas of the country, let's build the roads, proper, safe roads to those areas. As a Canadian government, that's an easy fix. We could start that right now, start building it right now.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. We have to, again, step in and fix part of our road building capabilities.
Big time.
So we would need to kind of, we can't keep building roads like we currently build roads. This is awful, right?
I mean, the potholes in Canada this year are beyond belief.
Beyond belief. And we've done a terrible job by letting that industry just kind of crater off to a limited number of companies not doing a great job. So we got to fix all that.
Yeah.
So we do agree on that. But those are just some of the programs. But if you go across, Jimmy, and you look at all these industries, these are the things that we need him to lay out with a plan. And I know earlier on the show we were kind of general about it, but I'm looking specific industry by industry for him to come to the table by his ministers and say, okay, you got to go, mining, you got to get Canadian funds to invest in this. We got to get Canadians trained. We got to build this. We got to develop this. We got to mine it ourselves.
And show Canadians actually it being done. Not just a memorandum of understanding or a discussion point, actually showing workers doing it.
Remember the old days? It's interesting. You don't see it as much anymore. Once in a while you see it, but not much. Remember the hard hats? So back in the 80s, there used to be all these groundbreaking hard hat events where people had shovels.
Oh, yeah.
Standing out.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't see them anymore, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let's start seeing them again.
Yeah. I want to see actual news footage of workers digging and building and creating.
Yeah. And I want that premier, prime minister, whoever minister on the road with the hard hat on, with the gold shovel,
thumbs up,
with the money going in the ground, people there working, projects let, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what we're missing.
But and as a Canadian, if you see that, you're like, okay, we don't know what we're dealing with Trump and CUSMA, but at least we're doing something for ourselves and we have a plan.
Exactly.
And I think that's a great point, Paul. If Canadians are told, just tell them a framework of the plan. We're not expecting to get all the intimate details because that's not the way the business world works. But then you're like, oh, okay, they're doing this and this. All right, okay, we'll get through this.
110 days, Jimmy.
Yeah. It's 110 days, and I get that urgency. But I mean, last night the White House did an offensive AI-generated video mocking the bombing of Iran.
Yeah.
That's what you're dealing with. That is what you're dealing with.
That's why, that is why I think you need the plan without them.
Yes.
You need to, at this point, you need to say, okay, if we can get, listen, if we can maintain half of the exporting, if we can maintain a quarter of the exporting, that's what we can depend on. If we can pick up another $100 billion from everyone else,
all the other countries,
that's what it looks like. But that leaves us with a delta of X, and we got to fill it by Y. And here's the number of things we do to fill Y. Yeah. And I need that. That's the equation that I'm looking for right now.
Absolutely. Paul, see, he's got all the answers. That's what we watch. Thanks, buddy.
I don't think so.